I started learning dance when I was 10, back in 1977, and now I'm aging myself, so learned for 10 years, and then I moved to the United States. But dance was always in the background. So I always knew if I had a girl, I had to teach her dance. So when she was 5, it was the right time. Teaching a daughter, mother-daughter, one-on-one is okay, but it does not help if she doesn't have peers to learn with. So that was my primary motivation. So I started the school in 2000, May 14. And there was a cohort of 5 students. And, it just grew. It just grew. Right now we are almost 22 years old. We are about 70 students. The thing that I'm really proud of is my older daughter, my first student, is back here to dance in this production.
I was my mom's first student. So we've been at this together for 20 plus years now. It's been interesting because I moved to New York 5-ish years ago. So it's taught me a lot about how I can support the process and kind of like cheerlead everyone on.
This production, the way we had planned it, was supposed to happen in April 2020. It was a celebration of our 20th anniversary. But, COVID happened and pretty much everything was shut down. And we went to online learning mode with a lot of skepticism in March of 2020. And much to my surprise, as well as the girls' surprise, we all adapted pretty quickly. And when we came back to the studio in June of 2021, I was quite surprised at the amount the girls had progressed and learned and sustained.
Interestingly, the one thing that was nice about COVID is that we did a lot of Zoom classes. So I got to keep that part of teaching too, because that's something I really enjoyed when I was growing up with this, is that we get to do a lot of teaching. And I got to do that from New York, which I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise.
In-person learning is very different from virtual learning. For them to negotiate space, that's a big deal. And some of them at home do not have a whole lot of room, so they get used to moving their bodies only a certain amount. Now, dancing in that wide, expansive studio, but at the same time negotiating space, maintaining your lines and your circles, that's a big deal. So that was a challenge, but, human brain quickly adapts to changing situations, I guess.
A lot of the pieces that we had choreographed and things like that, it was supposed to be all the seniors doing it, and a lot of the dances were upon us to choreograph, and we put a lot of thought into it, and how does it work, things like that. And the really exciting thing now is that there's been so much growth amongst the younger students that they're the ones taking on those pieces now, and they're the ones who are dancing. So those same dances that we had practiced together and things like that, seeing them dance is a really cool part of the process, and seeing how much they've grown as well.
This is the performance that so many of the younger kids get to take on a bigger chunk of, because it's not a normal performance for us at all. I would say in Bharatanatyam, there's 2 big elements that we kind of fuse together, and it's nritta, which is footwork, and abhinaya, which is expression and meaning to your dance. And this performance has a lot more of just meaning and pieces that are less footwork heavy, but more interpretive, and a lot is residing on the meaning behind the words and the dance itself. So it's interesting to see them pick up that element of it and have to grow into that more than just growing into the footwork, which is what we usually start with, is get iron down the footwork and get really good at that, and then you add on the emotion, because that takes more maturity. So it's interesting to see them sort of having to grow into that role, and us being able to help them with that.
I'm kind of really nervous for my first dance performance, but really excited because it's my first, and I've been waiting for it a long time because of COVID. We didn't really get to do it a few years ago, so I'm kind of excited.
Since COVID struck,
we haven't really got to do it. So I'm really excited and nervous to do it because there's a lot of responsibility. So being on stage, because like sometimes when I practice, I mess up a lot. So when I'm on stage, I'm worrying, will I mess up? Will I do good? Or will I know where I'm supposed to be? Like all these thoughts inside my head, like thinking I'm gonna do bad. And then like sometimes you have to take a deep breath. Sometimes I do that, it doesn't work. So I'm like, I see out there, I have my mom, my dad, my sister, like my family out there, and that helps me. It's like everybody like knows like how you're doing, and it like feels really close to you when you're dancing in front of everyone in the studio because you've like been with them for a long time dancing, so it doesn't really feel that bad to dance in front of them.
We all have been through a lot together. Yeah. Like we went through all of our awkward phases together. And it's kind of bittersweet to see it in the younger students because you don't realize how much of a constant dance was until you go to college. We were in the studio every Sunday for hours at a time, and all of a sudden that's gone. And then you come back and everything's kind of different. And especially with the pandemic, it is completely different because now the people you grew up with and the people you spent all those Sundays with are across the country, or you don't get to see them as often. So I think this performance too, coming back to it, it's one last time, like our last hurrah almost.
I think that's also part of growing as a family. Like, we're gonna let the younger kids do a lot more, and it's so heartwarming to see how much they've taken up and how much they've grown. Like, I've known all of these kids since they were like 5, and I came back and they're huge. Yeah, I think it's definitely influenced by the fact that we all grew up here. Like, this is our cultural community. So especially when we were younger, like Phoenix hadn't had quite an immigration boom yet. So you really found your cultural roots within dance class, which was really nice. And we all grew up together, literally, like every single Sunday we would see each other for years.
Bharatanatyam is one of the oldest codified forms of classical dance in the world. It's estimated to be about 1,000-ish years old, but it's probably older than that. It has its origins in Hindu temples, so it originated as a temple dance and kind of moved out of temples and became more secular the further away it got from temples. It got to us somehow, which is kind of miraculous that anything would survive for that long. And it is really, every time I practice, every time I dance, it is really like a fortified connection to the people who came before me, the women who came before me, because so many dancers were and still are women. So for me, it really is a connection to the past and to the people who came before me.
For a lot of us, it's a way of storytelling. It's a great way for us to preserve our culture, especially in the United States. I think that it's really important to tell these stories, to show our audiences where we come from, kind of what gives us our identity. And so it's really great to be able to perform in a group of people who really understand how you were brought up and what kind of stories are important to us. And that kind of narrates the way that we look at the world, the way that we problem solve, and the way that we treat other people. So I think that that's how it's kind of transgressed into modern day performing. It's, gone from temple dancing to now storytelling and preserving our culture.
It's keeping the grammar, but also adding new messages and new stories, because we can bring in our own personal experiences into the dance and the storytelling that we want to give to our audience. And that's what we do with this production, I think.
My mom and our dance teacher, she was such a constant, someone who you could talk to when you got your first period, and that awkwardness and going through that pain and that change, and she was there for that. And just going through things that are unique to being women and being brown women, occupying brown bodies, she was always there to have those conversations with us. And I'm particularly proud of the fact that she's instilled that value in us, that we, brown women existing in brown bodies, can now have those conversations with our younger peers who are going through that.
Srimati Mami would sometimes call us over to her house,
and she would give us like these ice cream parties where like all of us would be there, and she would just give us like ice cream. And it was just like really fun to meet up with everybody there and just like chill.
Trinity Mama used to tell us stories. Like we could learn about things that were going on and like what happened for our like history of our dance, like what we're doing. We could learn about it, and it's really fun to hear her story.
She would like teach us, and then if we were wrong, she would correct us, and then she would say why you shouldn't say it like that. So she would tell stories and make the class more fun.
Yeah, everyone would just gather around her, and she would just tell us, and it would be fun to just relax.
So goes without saying, my mom is number one. I still don't understand how she does all of this. Like, she's handling this entire production. She was a full-time working mom her entire life, and she's a full-time professor. So and this is more than a full-time job. She's very much emphasized to us our entire lives that this is art, but there's more to it than that. Like, everything we do should be benefiting other people. So not just with our art, but how are we going to use these events that we do to raise money for causes, raise awareness for causes. And I think that that's been like a fundamental core of how she raised us and has instilled in every one of her students, and something that I take with me in terms of like, maybe that's how I accidentally ended up in medicine.
I am so excited for every like woman and man and person, regardless of gender, who comes to our show to experience that, because we all have femininity inside of us and feminine qualities and tendencies inside of us, regardless of what our gender is. And I hope that we can all, through this production, get more in touch with that, with the feminine side, because like, there's so much aggression in the world, and I hope that this production can bring a little bit more compassion into the world.
Whenever we work on a new production, we think of themes, and we started working on this in 2019, I believe, and the girls and I were brainstorming, and they said, we have to do something about women. So we started with something small, and then it started growing. I've always been a big fan of the very first piece that we do, which is a classical Indian piece, and it talks about woman as the creator. So it says, without you, nothing is possible. So we started off with this. So we said, you know what? Why do we have to talk only about Indian traditions? So then we talked about the Hawaiian tradition, the Tahitian tradition, where women are believed to be the creators. And then we said, well, wait a minute, we are only talking about creators. Why not explore more? And then we had nurturers, educators, and activists, and of course artists, because, us being dancers, we had to do something about it. So, it kind of evolved. We started off with one piece, and we end up with a 2 hours and 10-minute production. Yeah.
Amma, look at all these beautiful dancers. Who are they? Where are they going?
Didn't I tell you we will be visiting a new museum featuring the history of women? These dancers are here to perform at the opening ceremony of the museum. They will take us on a wonderful journey through the great halls of this museum that captures the multiple facets of womanhood.
Limitless. Mari Maga.
By the way, what does nurturer mean? Is it only women who can become nurturers?
A nurturer is someone who cares for us. Now tell me, who takes care of all of you at home? Who cooks food for you? Takes you on trips? And looks after you when you're hungry and sleepy? Those people are your nurturers. While women are naturally intended to act as caregivers, they are not the only ones who care for us.
re